My idiotic son pulled a horrible prank on a disabled person. So I threatened to give him away to his abusive father to teach him a lesson. I am remarried to my loving husband and together we have 2 kids, both from our previous marriages. My son Jack's father is a bit of a character. He used to argue with me until he turned red in the face, but that was only the beginning. He started to hit me when I would get too close to other men or did anything at all to upset him. I had to leave him when he started to threaten Jack too. Thankfully, I found my husband Tom, but sometimes I'm a little stricter on Jack because I'm afraid that he'll turn out like his father. And it looks like I was smart to be afraid because it looks like he did. Jack is a pretty popular kid in school. His friends on the wrestling team came up with a prank for him to ask a heavily autistic girl who had a crush on him to the prom as a joke and for him to show up wearing a gorilla suit. Jack originally said no, but the wrestling team actually raised a fund which got to be somewhat north of $800 for him to do it and they paid for the gorilla suit. Jack agreed. If it matters, this is very out of character for him. After the prom, I was looking around on Instagram and saw pictures of him in the gorilla suit and was surprised that he didn't take his girlfriend Jess. After reading the comments, I learned what happened. To say I was furious doesn't even do it justice. I woke Jack up as soon as I saw it and screamed at him until my lungs gave out. Then, when Tom heard what was going on, he joined in. Tom and Jack have never gotten along. I can't prove it, but I suspect Jack's father has a hand in that. He constantly tells Jack that I lied about the abuse and that Tom is just trying to replace him. Jack told Tom, "F off, I'm talking to my mother." I told him to watch his tone or I'd send him to his father as punishment. He went really quiet after that, but he looked so angry at me. So, we took away all of Jack's electronics, and we had paid for a car for his graduation present. Because of his prank and disrespect to Tom, we instead gave it to Alyssa. We also forced him to give us the $800 plus, and we gave it to his date and made him write a letter of apology. He was also grounded for a month, and we canceled his 18th birthday party. When Jack's birthday came, there was a knock at the door. It was Jack's father and he had suitcases. Tom said, "What is this? The custody agreement says you don't get him on this birthday?" Dan just looked past Tom and said, "Hey kid, I'm here for the jailbreak." He then pointed at a Mustang and said, "Hope you like Fords. You can practice driving your new car on a road trip back to New York." The 2 of them were laughing, high-fiving and backslapping, and they just ignored us as we tried to intervene. The only time his father acknowledged me was to look me in the eye and say as cold as ice, "Checkmate." And for Jack to yell as they were driving off, "F off, Tom." Since then, Jack has had no contact with me. He talks a little bit to Alyssa and from the little he does tell her, he's doing well and his father is giving him the royal treatment, bringing him to steakhouses, Yankees games, and just giving him outright cash. It has been almost a year and I'm going crazy thinking I've lost my son. My idiotic son pulled a horrible prank on a disabled person. Jack is suing me. He claims that he did nothing wrong by torturing that poor autistic girl. He became just like his father. I reached out to Jack's father to see if he'd be willing to consider brokering peace between me and Jack. About a week later I got a response telling me to meet him and Jack at a cafe in Manhattan. He arranged a 6 a.m. flight and put me in a dodgy hotel in probably the most dangerous neighborhood in NYC. I arrived and saw Dan, Jack's girlfriend Jess and his friend Jonathan. I noticed Jess had an engagement ring on her finger. Jonathan said Jack has a claim against me for stealing the $840 and until that is resolved, I am not to contact him, but to only contact Jonathan. I told Jonathan that it was the money his friends paid him for the prank and that I gave to the girl. Jonathan said he was aware of the circumstances, but nonetheless, it wasn't my money and under the law, it was a theft and Jack has a legal claim against me. I said I didn't care if it was against the law, Jack had no right to that money and they could sue me if they wanted. Jack said you locked me up in my room like a prisoner for a month, took the car bought for me with Dad's child support money, took the money, and berated me for hours on end. Unless you're going to give me the car, this is the only thing you can undo. You said you wished we could have handled it better, so here is your chance. Or was that just bull lip service? I told him I was sorry, but I couldn't do it. Jonathan then gave me a cease and desist letter telling me to not contact Jack and to address all communication to Jonathan. Then Jack and Jess left and I asked Jack's father if he could talk for a minute. I asked him if he brought me there to humiliate me, and he said actually no he didn't. He brought me so I could humiliate myself. He'd actually worked very hard to get Jack to the point where he'd be open to talking to me again. If I were willing to back down just a little. But since he knew that if I had to choose between my selfishness and my own son, I'd choose my selfishness every time just like I did in our marriage. I asked him why he'd put us all through that. He said it was because a part of him wondered if I'd ever learn to pick love over anger. He bet his future that I wouldn't when he divorced me. So, he had to see for himself how it actually turned out after all these years later. I asked him if Jack was just a pawn in his game. He said no, if I actually would have picked Jack he'd be with me now and there would have been nothing anyone could have done to stop it. But instead, my selfishness over a stranger was more important to me than learning to move on with my own son. I asked him what about the girl. He then said, I hope she'll be a wonderful daughter to you since you lost a son for her. I told her I didn't know the girl. So, then he said sounds like a bad trade and left. Also, I'm apparently not invited to Jack's wedding. All this for a prank Jack pulled.